watch party after a long holiday weekend. I hope you guys enjoyed it because we've walked right into the best damn day of the week. In case you guys forgot, or in case you're new here, Monday today, it's the best damn day of the week. It leads you right into the rest of your week. One that we have a full one of now today. Considering last week, most I hope, excuse me, hope most of you guys got a couple of days off, got a chance to relax, maybe, who knows. We're all in these different situations, so it's really hard to just act like everyone has time off and gets to relax and gets to see family, gets to travel, gets to do any of these things that are very limited, slowly but becoming a lot more normalized in our society. So good to see you guys. I picked up something over the holiday weekend. If you couldn't tell, I'm a little sniffly. I got Kleenex and everything here. Can't use it while I'm on air because that sounds nasty. But I picked up a small one. I thought I beat it. Popped a bunch of vitamin C and zinc and all that stuff before it even hit me hard. So it's a little mild, but it's still a pain in the ass. So just want to give you guys that little warning. That's how these things operate. I'll be jumping on with John Iderola after this on the Damage Report for another hour and a half worth, of course. So as usual, after a long weekend of all kinds of things coming forward, things being exposed, investigations being launched, disaster continuing to happen, bad people still running the country, but a few more people understanding that very clear case. Let's jump straight into how this whole thing happened over the weekend and actually what it is that we saw before. Honestly, if it was a normal week, things would have been going down well before we got to Saturday. And it starts with the fascist in the White House. I'm sorry, his Department of War fascist over at the Department of Defense. Donald Trump and these guys are finally being exposed for the things that we always saw them being exposed for. Let's start here.
This morning, the Trump administration facing new questions about whether they violated international law after an explosive report from the Washington Post detailing a second strike was ordered on an alleged drug boat off the coast of Venezuela to comply with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's orders to kill everyone on board. On Capitol Hill, some Democrats and Republicans even accusing the administration of committing a war crime.
It's a clear violation of the DOD's own laws of war, as well as international laws about the way you treat people who are in that circumstance. And so this rises to the level of a war crime if it's true.
Obviously, if that occurred, that would be very serious. And I agree that would be an illegal act.
In a rare bipartisan statement, the Senate Armed Services Committee says they will be conducting vigorous oversight to determine the facts related to these circumstances. The top Republican and Democrat in the House Armed Services Committee following suit, saying they are taking bipartisan action to gather a full accounting of the operation in question.
ABC News there talking about what is I think everyone already knew, but I guess now we have to actually confront war crimes being committed by Pete Hegseth under the guidance of Donald Trump and how they want to keep killing more people. So they've finally been exposed a little bit for the things that happened. But let me give you the details of which one of these strikes, because as we already remember, there was multiple strikes that they kept talking about. They were committing on potentially innocent people because they did that whole thing that they promised from the beginning. They got rid of, the judicial process, they got rid of due process, and they want to make sure they just kill people. And the whole investigative process is, trust me, bro, I'm Donald Trump. That doesn't really work. This is the situation that they're referring to.
On September 2nd, the president posted this video, a missile hitting a boat allegedly carrying drugs from Venezuela. But the Washington Post reports there were 2 survivors left clinging to the wreckage. The Special Operations Commander overseeing the attack then reportedly ordering U.S. services to carry out a second airstrike to kill them all, allegedly to comply with Hegseth's orders to leave no survivors. Hegseth calling the report fabricated, saying the strikes are lawful and that they target designated terrorist organizations. ABC News has not confirmed the details of those orders. So far, the U.S. has hit 21 boats, killing 83 people. The White House has not provided any evidence of the crimes committed or identified the people killed. But the president is threatening to expand the operation, this weekend writing on social media the airspace above and surrounding Venezuela to be closed in its entirety.
That leads into potentially the next steps that are going down with this administration, but really fast, because there was folks that were responding to this and trying to figure out exactly what it is. If it's true, it's definitely a war crime. They have to begin to confront the things that people have been reporting and talking about. I'm sorry, not people. The folks in this administration have been openly talking about at press conferences, at their little circles of kissing Donald Trump's ass. Every time they get the opportunity, they talk about these illegal things that they're doing to random folks in the middle of the ocean, acting like it's whoever it is that they claim it to be, because that's what propaganda and presentation presidents do. They do and say things and say, trust me, it's what it is, because they think it makes them look better. So after, of course, Pete Hegseth kept talking about the lethality, I think it's pretty believable that they are conducting in lethality. It doesn't matter about if it's legal or not. This is a criminal organization running the White House. We know that. We've been experienced it for this entire year. That's how they operate. So I guess we have to find about whether or not this is, actually happened. And maybe, I don't have much faith in it, but maybe because it's bipartisan here, they're going to take part in investigating and looking into this. Because right afterwards, Chairman Wicker and Ranking Member Reid, both, these senators, Roger Wicker and Chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, U.S. Senator Jack Reid, submitted this. The committee is aware of recent news reports and the Department of Defense's initial response regarding alleged follow-up strikes on suspected narcotic vessels in the Southcom area of responsibility. The committee has directed inquiries to the department and will be conducting vigorous oversight to determine the facts related to these circumstances. I just need them to not maybe accept the lies that are going to be given to them in this investigation. Because, I saw that it was reported there was going to be this investigation. Roger Wicker, Republican, was on board with it. I was like, oh, it looks like a couple of Republicans that normally kiss ass and are too afraid to stand up for their oath that they've given to this country. Maybe they're starting to see who the enemy of this country is in the White House, and they're going to look to investigate him. But the wording of that kind of felt like, we're going to ask them about it, and we'll see if what they say is true. You're going to look into further aspects of it? Or are you going to look into what it is that we already saw going on, the things that they were saying? Are you going to look into the investigations that are being launched also by other countries that are seeing this go down? We've already seen some of our allies stop participating in intelligence sharing with us because of these strikes. This is before all of this, these new revelations put forward by the Washington Post, revelations that, I guess I'm glad to see that there's some revelations, but the bottom line here is we've been seeing this. So let me show you more of what Representative Mike Turner had to say, since he had to answer for this and the concern and the fear of whether or not this is real before he finally says, okay, we have to do something. We're going to see that slowly peel back. Here's what Mike Turner had to say. He was on the weekend shows, specifically here, Face the Nation.
The Washington Post is reporting that before the strike on the very first suspected drug boat in September, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered that everyone on board be killed. And then when 2 of the 11 people on board survived, a follow-on strike was ordered to finish them off in the water. Now, some law of war experts are saying that that was illegal, that killing people who are no longer able to fight is a war crime. What is your view, and what questions do you have for the Pentagon?
Congress does not have information that had occurred. Both the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, and ranking members have opened investigations. Obviously, if that occurred, that would be very serious, and I agree that would be an illegal act. That is not the legal opinion or the information or the legal justification, the acts that have been described to Congress that are being undertaken in this. There are very serious concerns in Congress about the attacks on the so-called drug boats down in the Caribbean and the Pacific, and the legal justification that's been provided. But this is completely outside of anything that has been discussed with Congress, and there is an ongoing investigation.
Representative Turner there was talking about how they've had these previous concerns about the strikes already, and somehow there was some kind of justification already explained to them. Did they share that with the American people? Because the justification I kept seeing was, trust me. The justification I kept hearing was these narco terrorists aren't going to bring more drugs to our country. And then as actual information came forward talking about how it's impossible for these narco terrorists to be bringing drugs to the country just because of the distance and the size of the boats that they were using, we just ignore those things, that we call facts, to dispute all the things that they said. So for some reason, Mike Turner was convinced. I think it's because now that things look even worse, Mike Turner still doesn't want to really acknowledge what's right in front of us. I get being safe and wanting to talk about how we'd wait for the investigations. I understand all that. So let's wait for the investigations, but let's make sure those investigations have some teeth and are actually looking for answers rather than a way to say, well, they told us no, so I guess that's no. Because by the way, nobody's going to be buying that anymore. So again, as the heat comes down, I think it's pretty clear to understand how Donald Trump will respond to this. I'm not sure if he can pass this on to Joe Biden. Let's see who he can possibly pass it along to.
The president saying if the report is true, he wouldn't have wanted a second strike.
We'll look into it, but no, I wouldn't have wanted that, not a second strike. The first strike was very lethal. It was fine, and if there were two people around, but Pete said that didn't happen.
Does that make you?
I have great confidence.
Pete said it didn't happen. But at the same time, if it did, as Donald Trump said, he wouldn't have wanted that. Why would we believe that you wouldn't want that? And why wouldn't you know about it? You remember they could just last week or the week before, we were talking about the commander-in-chief shall not be defied by these 6 rogue Democrats who were talking about not following illegal, unlawful orders. I thought this guy knows everything. I thought everything he says is law. I thought he's the commander-in-chief. How the hell does the commander-in-chief not know what's going on with his Department of War Secretary Pete Hegseth, who runs everything through him? He doesn't know all of a sudden. And all of a sudden, if it did happen again, which he's going to claim later that it didn't, he's going to stand by Pete Hegseth, or Pete Hegseth's out on his own. Maybe, I think maybe pretty soon Pete Hegseth might start learning that Donald Trump throws everyone under the bus after he forces them and tells them and demands their loyalty and their covering for his ass constantly. So I can't bet that Donald Trump is going to be covering Pete Hegseth's ass after he gets, potentially busted for this whole thing, which I have absolutely, no confidence that will happen. But here's a little bit more of the spinning in people's minds that have to maybe have something to do with stopping this, that are on the Republican side. Don Bacon is one of them as well, who's had a couple of things to say about Donald Trump negatively regarding this Russia stuff. But here specifically on these strikes and these revelations about these strikes, Don Bacon is still trying to figure a way around it.
The Venezuelan alleged drug boat that was struck one time, but then a second time as 2 survivors were clinging to the wreckage of the boat. Your committee, you're on the Armed Services Committee, is going to be investigating this, according to your chairman. How concerned are you that this may have been a real violation of the way, even if there's a question of whether or not we're at war, but that this would violate the laws of warfare?
Well, it is a big concern. Now, Secretary of Defense Hegseth denies it. We should get to the truth. I don't think he would be foolish enough to make this decision to say, kill everybody, kill the survivors, because that's a clear violation of the law of war. So I'm very suspicious that he would have done something like that, because it would go against common sense. So let's get the facts. And if the facts go to where the Washington Post article takes it, well, then we'll have to go from there. But if it was as if the article said, that is a violation of the law of war. When people want to surrender, you don't kill them. And they have to pose an imminent threat. It's hard to believe that 2 people on a raft trying to survive would pose an imminent threat. So let's get the facts first. The Secretary Hegseth deserves his day to present his side of the story.
And
isn't it weird? There's a lot there. Secretary Hegseth deserves a day to present his side, maybe defend himself, unlike those folks that they just launched missiles at and claimed that they were, narco terrorists coming to give your kid some more meth. So that's Don Bacon's approach. Really fast, John Carl there, even in his question, was asking. So there's a question of whether or not we're even at war. This is what Jonathan Carl said. Why is there a question of whether or not we're at war? What question would that be? Has Congress declared war? Has the normal process for declaring war on another country, have we gone through that process? Because for some reason, Jonathan Karl thinks that there's a question of whether or not we're at war. Why is there a question of whether or not we're at war? Has anyone declared war on Venezuela yet? I mean, I know they're talking about it a lot, but this is these slow normalizations of aggressive, violent, warlike actions that our Department of War is taking on. And it's facilitated by those same media figures that Donald Trump likes to say are fake news and always comes for them. They just carried some water for you and said, we're not sure if we're at war, which gives any kind of percentage of inkling that we are at war. We're not at war. We're killing people and saying that they're narco-terrorists and then saying we might go to war too. Let's stop there. I mean, there's so much more just with that part, but still. Main thing here with Don Bacon trying to dance his way around this is he wouldn't think that Pete Hegseth is foolish enough, that he's foolish enough to say, kill them all. Pete Hegseth was also quoted when he was running the veterans organization, when he was chanting at some strip club and harassing, women that work in the organization. He was talking about kill all Muslims, kill all Muslims. That was one of the things that they accused him of. And so now him saying kill all narco-terrorists that we call narco-terrorists in the middle of the water, why is that so crazy? Pete Hegseth is foolish. Of course he'd be that foolish. Matter of fact, he's even foolish enough to write this in response to this whole drama that's breaking down right in front of his face. He says, as usual, the fake news is delivering more fabricated, inflammatory, and derogatory reporting to discredit our incredible warriors fighting to protect the homeland. As I read this, I want you guys to remember, he's responding to these reports that he killed people floating on debris after they shot at them and blew them up the first time. More. As we've said from the beginning in every statement, these highly effective strikes are specifically intended to be lethal kinetic strikes. The declared intent is to stop lethal drugs, destroy narco boats, and kill the narco terrorists who are poisoning the American people. Every trafficker we kill is affiliated with a designated terrorist organization. The Biden administration preferred the kid gloves approach, allowing millions of people, including dangerous cartels and unvetted Afghans, to flood our communities with drugs and violence. He went on and on talking about the last administration. Our current operations in the Caribbean are lawful under both U.S. and international law, with all actions in compliance with the law of armed conflict and approved by the best military and civilian lawyers up and down the chain of command. Okay. So it's a long diatribe about how they're doing the right things, which, again, I really hope that this investigation doesn't ask Pete Hegseth. And the answer is, sure. Pete Hegseth said that they're doing all this the right way. Of course he's going to say that. Would Pete Hegseth, who's a well-known liar, say, yeah, you guys, you got me. I don't know how you got me, but you got me. That's how liars work. So of course he'll say all those things and assume that he's right and hope that he just gets away with it. But he's definitely foolish enough to then go out there and not directly and specifically say, yeah, that double tap that everyone's talking about, I didn't do that. I feel like I didn't really see that in that whole space. But there's also this is from September 6th. And I believe that ABC News report that I ran off the top was from the beginning of September as well. So they're probably responding to that one. The specific one that we're now talking about that was reported by the Washington Post. J.D. Vance, in trying to carry the water on X, said, killing cartel members who poison our fellow citizens is the highest and best use of our military. Krasenstein responded, killing the citizens of another nation who are civilians without any due process is called a war crime. J.D. Vance says, I don't give a shit what you call it. I have a suggestion for Representative Don Bacon. J.D. Vance is foolish enough to say that he doesn't give a shit about war crimes. I feel like Pete Hegseth would probably also not give a shit about war crimes because J.D. Vance just said he doesn't give a shit about war crimes. I think we should take their word for it and understand that that's what they're about. As a matter of fact, when all these people with crazy Trump derangement syndrome that they keep talking about, we're talking about these being war crimes. I get the idea it's because people like the president of the United States sat at a desk with a bunch of yes men and women surrounding him, and he bragged about killing innocent people in these waters.
But we have noticed that there are no ships in the ocean anymore. We're seeing that there's like no ships, when the first one we went, there were hundreds of boats. Now there are no boats. I wonder why, meaning no drugs are coming across, probably stopping some fishermen too. I mean, to be honest, if I were a fisherman, I wouldn't want to go fishing. Just let's take a little trip, because I'd say, man, if they Maybe they think I have drugs downstairs. I don't want that. I think the fishing business probably been hurt, but no, there are literally no boats. This was a boat, and we were surprised to see it. Now, what?
The fishing business is taking a hit. Maybe fishermen in the area would probably not want to go out there all that much. That I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like a president saying that we're just killing anybody, we're shooting at any boats, and they could be fishermen, therefore they're too afraid to go and do their jobs, livelihood stuff, because we're killing anybody randomly. I feel like that's an admission of war crimes. I feel like that's an admission of just shooting at people with absolutely zero understanding of who it is they are and what it is that they're doing, and that they're also fishermen, as this guy pointed out. It's weird. It's weird how Trump also has Trump derangement syndrome enough to talk about how it is that he's doing exactly what it is that we said he's doing. But this last piece, because I was waiting for this to come back up. I was waiting for this moment when we finally start acknowledging what it is that we've always seen with these guys and their approach to this, and understand and maybe ask more questions. Why is it that Admiral Alvin Halsey from like a couple months ago decided to step down? Do you guys remember?
The admiral overseeing those U.S. strikes on alleged drug boats near Venezuela, he's now stepping down. Courtney Cubey joins us saying, Courtney, this comes as a surprise.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. The commander of U.S. Southern Command, Admiral Alvin Halsey, said he is retiring after just 1 year on the job. His command is responsible for the deadly strikes on boats the Trump administration says are carrying drugs and cartel members to the United States. President Trump saying the strikes are necessary to protect Americans, though some lawmakers have questioned the legality of these strikes. In a statement, Admiral Halsey said it's been an honor to serve, but he didn't say why he was retiring. It comes just after President Trump floated the idea of strikes against cartels inside Venezuela and that he authorized covert action there.
If you guys don't remember that, the further details of that was also Pete Hegseth was butting heads with Admiral Halsey, probably about this stuff, because, he didn't come out and say it, and was attempting to fire him if he didn't go along with resigning, because there was probably some pushback from people who actually do the job, that have been in the military for this long, that understand what a war crime is. I feel like Hegseth understands it too. In fact, he probably enjoys it. That's who they are. That's what fascists do. They're murderers, and they like to do extrajudicial killings of people because if they're brown, they don't matter. That's how white supremacists work. It's like all the things we've been saying about these guys is panning out to be 100% true, and not because of new revelations, but because of the things we just saw there. Again, that was a couple months ago. J.D. Vance's tweet was from the beginning of September. Donald Trump bragging about blowing up fishermen was months ago. This isn't new. We're just now seeing it. Here's something else that was also expected. Let's shift to this next thing, but give me a second. Thank you guys for being here, of course, as well. If you just showed up, we got lots happening. It was a long weekend. Matter of fact, there was like 6 things I wanted to talk about today, but I had to narrow it down to 3 because, I only got an hour before I jump over on John's show. Matter of fact, I only have a couple minutes to even tell you guys this. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and also share this stream if you can. And I feel like you can. I'm going to do it right now because I can too. Why not? Why not be part of the team? Why not be part of the party? It's a good party, right? Hope you guys enjoyed your weekend, because there was more devastation that happened despite all of it. I tried to kind of ignore it, but it's pretty much impossible. Again, I believe this even happened before the weekend really got moving. Residents of DC, I'm not sure if you guys, anybody watching, happens to be the fallout that continued from this shooting that went down just near the Capitol, or was it the White House? Who knows?
2 National Guard members are in critical condition after being shot just blocks from the White House in what investigators call a targeted attack.
The suspect came around the corner, raised his arm with a firearm, and discharged it at the National Guard members.
The suspect, identified as 29-year-old Ramanula Lochinwall, allegedly tracked the guardsman before opening fire. He was then shot by other Guard members and was taken into custody critically injured.
The reason that this suspect is in custody is because of the bravery of the men and women of the National Guard who responded due to their extensive training to secure American lives today.
President Trump overnight called for the re-examination of all immigrants from Afghanistan admitted under the Biden administration, saying we must take all necessary measures to ensure the removal of any alien from any country who does not belong here or add benefit to our country. Now the president is ordering 500 more troops to Washington. They'll join the more than 2,000 already there. Overnight, the president insisting the deployment will continue, saying we will not be deterred from the mission the service members were so nobly fulfilling. And breaking overnight, CIA Director John Ratcliffe telling Fox News the suspect in the D.C. shooting previously worked with the CIA and U.S. forces in Afghanistan, and that's why he was allowed to come to the U.S. in 2021 after the U.S. withdrawal.
So as you hear on the back end there, he came in 2021. A lot of details on that coming up. But I just want to point out the main thing here. This shooting went down in D.C. Of the two National Guards folks. I believe the woman that was shot passed away, National Guardsmen. So in response to that, as you could expect, this administration is talking about the more lethal approaches that they'll have. They'll send in even more National Guardsmen. They'll talk about the noble mission that was being carried out by this guy who told them to come and start patrolling the streets while people are mad at them and say, get the hell out of my city, all that stuff. So they're getting their, their desired result. The problem is they continue to use people like this National Guardsman and other folks that are there as pawns to be shot at eventually, because remember they armed them after a couple weeks, and then they went forward to keep telling them start patrolling people's neighborhoods, get to harassing people, racially profile folks, act like you're supposed to be there doing these illegal actions that the president told you to do, and eventually somebody's going to be fed up. The good news for them is that the guy that was apparently, we're still looking for the proposed motive, fed up, was an Afghan national. But there's a lot more to that. Nothing of which connected to what is that Trump said in response to this originally. Because I want you guys to remember, this is about DC and National Guardsmen being shot. See where you can somehow find the connection to that and what is Trump started talking about.
This attack underscores the single greatest national security threat facing our nation. The last administration let in 20 million unknown and unvetted foreigners from all over the world, from places that you don't want to even know about. No country can tolerate such a risk to our very survival. An example is Minnesota, where hundreds of thousands of Somalians are ripping off our country and ripping apart that once great state. Billions of dollars are lost, and gangs of Somalians come from a country that doesn't even have a government, no laws, no water, no military, no nothing. As their representatives in our country preach to us about our Constitution and how our country is no good. We're not going to put up with these kind of assaults on law and order by people who shouldn't even be in our country. We must now re-examine every single alien who has entered our country from Afghanistan under Biden, and we must take all necessary measures to ensure the removal of any alien from any country who does not belong here or add benefit to our country. If they can't love our country, we don't want them.
I think he keeps making it very clear that anytime anything happens that he hopes will happen and he's trying to perpetuate happening, he can then link it to some reason he's upset at Somalian immigrants that are in Minnesota. Well, it's because he's a racist. I just want to give you guys the straightforward and simple answer. Every time he thinks of anyone that's not white and light-skinned enough, not pale enough for him, it turns into, oh, I know there's Somalians in Minnesota. So that has everything to do with this, right? And now I can connect this to those folks and for some reason act like that's what we're about. Maybe he's looking to send some more National Guards troops up to Minnesota now. Maybe that's the thought. He's like, let me connect it to them somehow, because anybody that's brown must be disastrous to this country. That's what propaganda white nationalists always say. So I'm glad someone actually asked him the question about that.
Many of these people are criminals. Many of these people are people that shouldn't be here. And many of them have been gotten out. I mean, we've gotten out a lot of the people that, we've taken a lot of them out of here. But they came in, legally, right? Yeah, I know this deal. Sorry, many are wonderful. Yeah, I'm sure.
I said many are here legally, though. What should they think in terms of their possible?
Well, they can't be happy. Okay? They can't be happy because what's taking place between that, if you look at Somalia, they're taking over Minnesota, and we got a lot of problems with the gangs, with all of the things taking place in Minnesota. We have an incompetent governor, we have a dope governor. They can't be happy about what's going on. And if you talk about the Afghans, there's a problem because so many bad ones came in on the planes. They just walked in. Whoever the strongest people were physically in a way, but whoever the strongest, they got on the planes. There was no checking. They just swamped the planes. They took off. We had no idea who they were. Yeah, do you want to ask a question behind?
Me? Hi, sir. Happy
Sure.
Thanksgiving.
Hi.
What do the Somalians have to do with this Afghan guy who shot the national?
Nothing, but Somalians have caused a lot of trouble. They're ripping us off for a lot of money. There's a tremendous amount of money going back to Somalia. What the hell are we paying money to Somalia for? But they're ripping off our country at a level that few people have been able to see before. Mm-hmm. That's about the only thing. You talk about competence. We have Ilhan Omar, who does nothing but complain about our country and our Constitution. And she comes from a country with practically no country. It's devastated. It's crime-ridden. It's a mess. It's a disgrace. And we took their people at a tremendous. We're not taking their people anymore. We're not taking their people. And we're getting a lot of their people out because they're nothing but trouble. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Go ahead.
Does that have anything to do with the shooting in D.C.? The Somalian population in Minnesota and Ilhan Omar and Governor Waltz, I guess. All that is what just kept spinning through this guy's empty ass head, full of racism. Everything is couched in bigotry. Everything, like everything he thinks about is about how much better he thinks he is than other folks because he knows that he's not. That's the basis for his thought process. So someone had to directly ask him, what the fuck does this have to do with the shooting that you said you care about? I mean, nothing, but I'm talking about brown people. Do you know that? They're brown people, though. Aren't you afraid yet? I said brown people. In fact, I said Somalia, and then I said Ilhan Omar. Aren't you afraid yet? If you listen to this guy and listen to his, fairy tale stories and talk about how afraid you are, I guess you deserve to get ripped off and, stolen, your shit stolen by him because he's this criminal that thinks he can go boo, and then you're afraid enough of all the black and brown people, and then you move on and get go along with his hatred some more. It's very basic. It's like so basic. That's what makes it so frustrating that so many people are following this. It's extremely basic bigotry and racism. Here's what Christy Noem says. The suspect who shot a brave National Guardsman is an Afghan national who was one of the many unvetted mass paroled into the United States under Operation Allies Welcome on September 8th of 21 under the Biden administration. I will not utter this depraved individual's name. He should be starved of the glory he so desperately wants. These men and women of the National Guard are mothers, fathers, sisters, daughters, children of God, carrying out the same basic public safety and immigration laws enshrined in the law for decades. The politicians and media who continue to vilify our men and women in uniform need to take a long, hard look in the mirror. Brian and I will be praying hard for these two National Guardsmen, their families, and every American who puts on uniform to defend our freedom. So again, of course, use the military as a shield in front of you to try and throw off the fact that this is all full of bigotry, this is all full of hatred. It's the direct result of sending National Guardsmen into cities to do nothing and to act like they're doing something except for harass citizens waiting for them to respond like this. It's just the way it is. So I don't know, for some reason, again, every time Christy Noem goes on any kind of show, every time Kevin Hassett goes on any kinds of show, anytime Howard Lutnick goes on any kind of show, I'm wondering, what was the plan? Did you think this was going to go well? So Christy Noem, she did the same thing. She went on Meet the Press, and I don't think it went that well.
I do want to go back to this question, Madam Secretary. Do you know what the motive was at this point? Do you believe the suspect acted alone?
We're still going through all of that information, and I'll let the FBI and DOJ reveal new information. But I will say we believe he was radicalized since he's been here in this country. We do believe it was through connections in his home community and state, and we're going to continue to talk to those who interacted with him, who were his family members, to talk to them. So far, we've had some participation, but anyone who has information on this needs to know that we will be coming after you and we will bring you to justice. We absolutely will persecute you because we do know that we will never allow this to continue to happen in our country. Allow individuals who came to our country that were unvetted by Joe Biden, allowed to run free and loose. We are going to bring them to justice and make sure that they're returned out of this country if they aren't here for the purposes of being an American.
For the purposes of being an American. Did she have any plan in her head before she went on this appearance? Did she have a thought? Maybe the talking points that she's supposed to push outside of just the bullet points of Biden, blame Biden, and then say that it's the Democrats' fault, and then you should be afraid. Because maybe she should have crafted a couple of phrases, maybe even a sentence to come forward for what she wanted to say. Because did you notice? She said, "We will persecute you." She said, "We'll persecute you." Not prosecute you. I think that's a full illustration, that Freudian slip of what it is. Maybe she doesn't know the difference. The difference between prosecution, which is, when you bring folks and actually charge them and present evidence, convict them, and then punish them. Instead, what this administration does is it persecutes people, to make sure that they harass them, that they vilify them in society, that they make sure everyone knows, in their opinion, that they deserve to be ridiculed, maybe attacked, murdered, killed. Who cares? They're brown. That's the approach. That's what Donald Trump does. He persecutes people. And then when he's actually prosecuted, he claims that he's been persecuted because, his followers are stupid and they listen to anything that he says, and they also get harmed in the process. So again, the point of this whole thing, so I wish there was some kind of hidden camera, probably in the back areas of this White House and this administration, because as soon as the shooting went down, they were celebrating their ass off. Popped a couple champagne bottles and said, "Yes, we finally got one of these National Guardsmen killed. This woman, we got her murdered. So now that she's dead, we can act like we give a damn anything about her, and we can go to raging and getting mad on Fox News."
Best of the best. They are working so we can all go to church, so our kids can go to school, so we can celebrate Thanksgiving with our families. Yet this horrific tragedy happened right now, and these families are having Thanksgiving at the bedside of their children and their family members.
Just heartbreaking, Madam Attorney General. And I know that the motive is not yet known, but I do wonder if you have a reaction to the fact that we have just witnessed for months several Democratic politicians blasting, decrying the administration's effort to put guard troops in cities like Memphis, in cities like Washington. You just had one of them, Alyssa Slotkin, last week talking about warning that the National Guard was going to shoot Americans, but yet we saw just the opposite. This appears to be a targeted, blatant attack on the Guard troops. Your reaction?
Yeah, I can't, again, talk a lot about the facts, but yes, I agree with you. What these lawmakers are doing, what some of these news anchors on other networks are doing, what their guests are saying is disgusting. It's despicable. They should be praising our men and women in law enforcement. And we are looking at everything they have said and why they said it, and if they encouraged acts of violence. But it is, it's actually sad what our country has come to with these progressive left idiots who are doing this and saying this about our heroes who are keeping them safe. And some of the people, let me continue, who are saying this, they have security details to keep them safe. It's unbelievable to me.
It's unbelievable to me that Pam Bondi figured she had to ramp up her fake ass anger over this to try and push this same partisan approach. You see, I'm mad. I'm so mad about this. The anchor there was asking her about, there was Slotkin warning folks about National Guard potentially shooting Americans, which they'll just gloss over and say that folks haven't been shot. It hasn't been directly National Guard members, but it has been federal officers that have shot Americans, that have shot people here legally. It's happened. They attack people, pull out guns, start pointing them at them and say, "I will kill you. I don't care what kind of paperwork you've got," when they shouldn't even have to provide papers when some random masked ICE or National Guard or Border Patrol agent runs up on them, or maybe someone faking and acting like they're these officials, running up on you with guns out, saying, "Do what I tell you." So when someone finally gets shot, Pam Bondi got excited. She goes, "Now is my chance. We can continue to try and deter people's brains from what is I'm doing with the cover up of these Epstein files, and I can start screaming and ranting and raving about this. Who cares about that National Guard woman's life? Who cares about her? I'm here to promote myself and Donald Trump. That's what we do, and we do it on partisan lines. So as they continue to push this whole narrative, you guys hear about the revelation behind this whole thing? Because they keep talking about in 2021, when this guy was admitted, the shooter in this situation was admitted into the country based off of his work with the United States as far as the conflict in Afghanistan. After being admitted, what then did happen, and who let him stay? You know, it doesn't always match up with all that propaganda, but they're going to gloss this over real quick.
What we know is that he comes here from Afghanistan. Now, this is a guy who's been living in Washington State, not Washington, D.C., on the other end of the country. He comes here from Afghanistan in the summer of 2021. Remember what that was like. Refugees fleeing Afghanistan, people had to be recommended by U.S. people on one end, vetted on this end by government background checks as far as they could do in Afghanistan, have sponsors and so on. He settled in Washington. He applies for asylum in December of 2024. Now he goes through another vetting process involving that, and he's approved for asylum in April of this year under the Trump administration. He comes in under the Biden administration. These checks are being done. I remember as a part of the Joint Terrorism Task Force in New York, where we supplied people for that vetting process, it was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of people. They were being kept in military installations. A lot of that vetting had to be done very quickly. I also remember we had to go back afterwards when we found information on certain people and bring them back. In this case, that's all we know about this individual, but it appears that he must have done work either for or with the United States in Afghanistan to become part of the Allies Welcome Program and be brought here. That still doesn't get us closer to motive.
No, although.
So as they go back to motive, but also point out the fact that this process for this shooter to be admitted to stay in this country ended under Donald Trump's term. There's all kinds of ins and outs and different ways and processes of how this works that I don't understand. And we'd be able to go through all that gray area if we weren't always working in the black and white area of Donald Trump saying everything I do is wonderful and great and everything Joe Biden did was disastrous and everything that I've done is actually his fault. So if we're going to go under their normal process of saying, hey, it was just their fault, we have to say, hey, it was just your fault. And somehow, again, this clueless ass president who only works in partisan ramblings and screamings was asked about that too. This is the best part. This is what I'm always looking for. How about someone ask him, what do you think of the reality that keeps slapping you in the face?
Very much, everybody. Go ahead.
Do you believe that this asylum claim that is being floated? Of course, you just detailed that this suspect was flown in under the Biden administration.
Yeah.
But was he granted asylum under your administration?
When it comes to asylum, when they're flown in, it's very hard to get them out. No matter how you want to do it, it's very hard to get them out. But we're going to be getting them all out now. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. Very much, everybody.
Once they're in, it's very hard to get them out. So therefore, what you do is you grant them their asylum process. Huh? That's what you do instead, since it's so hard to get them out. Or you just slam on the desk and run away like a little bitch. Okay, that's it. I'm done. Oh my God, I don't want you guys to ask me any more questions about this because it totally flies in the face of my narrative that doesn't make any sense. Let me run away now. That's a coward. So do you think any of the National Guard folks that he's sending all over the country should have any faith in him backing them up? Do you think their celebrations of this woman being murdered should make the rest of these National Guardsmen feel good about themselves as they go and follow his orders to attack American citizens? So then afterwards, he can slam his desk, run away, and say that it's not his fault. I'm just wondering. Maybe they'll start listening to that video from those Democratic senators and representatives, veterans who said, don't follow illegal orders. Maybe for their own good, potentially, because they're attacking their country. let's wrap up with this. I got one last story. Yes, I'm sorry. It also starts with Kristi Noem, but it's because these guys keep talking about how they follow court orders. It was like a few weeks ago, maybe even close to a month. Donald Trump was talking about how, yeah, we follow court orders. What are we talking about? Actually, I'm sorry, it's Caroline Levitt talking about how Donald Trump always follows court orders. The problem with that is they don't follow court orders, especially considering their mass deportation process.
Secretary Noem, let me turn to my final topic. In a filing in federal court this week, the Justice Department said that when the administration was ordered back in March to stop sending detained migrants to a mega prison in El Salvador, you personally made the final call to continue the flights anyway. Is that correct? Do you acknowledge that?
You know, we have court filings going on and decisions that are going forward. I'll let them continue to play through that process.
But did you make that
I'm
call?
proud of President Trump and his leadership and the decisions that we have made. And the decisions that are made on deportations, where flights go and when they go, are my decision at the Department of Homeland Security. And we will continue to do the right thing and ensure that dangerous criminals are removed.
So that you're saying that it was your decision. It sounds like the judge wanted to ensure that people were given due process. He said very clearly, quote, any plane containing these folks that is going to take off or is in the air needs to be returned to the United States, but those people need to be returned to the United States. However that's accomplished, I leave to you. But this is something that you need to make sure is complied with immediately. Did you defy the court's order, Madam Secretary?
No, Kristen, and that's one of the things that we continue to face across this country is activist judges who are using radical decisions that have no standing and no grounds to try to stop what President Trump is doing to protect America and to keep us safe. So we'll continue to do the right thing, continue to work and do protect Americans, no matter what radical judge comes out and tries to stop us. We'll do the right thing and know that we're on the side of the law, the side of the Constitution, and the side of the American people.
Kristi Noem needs to stay off TV. In fact, I'm sorry, Kristi Noem needs to be in handcuffs because she just got cornered on violating that court order. Because her excuse for violating that court order was calling the judge who put forward that court order a radical judge, a radical activist judge. That's all you have to really say if you're in the Trump administration is radical activist judge that I defy court orders over because I'm above the law. Because we're fascists is what she means. What she's too busy doing is promoting herself and their imprisonment process and their torture process in front of these prisoners here. Do you guys remember this? This is from months ago, like April or May.
Here at CCOT today and visiting this facility. And first of all, I want to thank El Salvador and their president for their partnership with the United States of America to bring our terrorists here and to incarcerate them and have consequences for the violence that they have perpetuated in our communities. I also want everybody to know if you come to our country illegally, this is one of the consequences you could face. First of all, do not come to our country illegally. You will be removed and you will be prosecuted. But know that this facility is one of the tools in our toolkit that we will use if you commit crimes against the American people.
Imprisoning people with no due process in another country is part of the tools in their toolbox that they're going to use to continue their fascist run of the country. So I just want to give you guys that quick flashback. Because after I saw Kristi Noem on Meet the Press and basically admit that, she should be in prison, she also went on This Week with Jonathan Karl. And I was like, okay, she's probably going to say something else. Because usually when these folks go on these programs, like they'll probably say the same thing. She can't possibly say the same thing.
Ask you before you go, as you know, a U.S. district judge has now reopened a contempt inquiry into the decision to fly those planes of Venezuelan immigrants, alleged gang members, to El Salvador after he ordered the planes to be turned around. In a DOJ filing, the Department of Justice says that you were the one that made that order. So I have two questions on that. First of all, is that right? Does the buck effectively stop with you on this? Was this your responsibility? And had you known that the judge had ordered those planes to be turned around when that order was issued?
Yes, I made that decision, and that decision was under my complete authority and following the law and the Constitution and the leadership of this president who is dedicated to getting dangerous criminal terrorists and gangs and cartels out of our country. And I'm so grateful that we get the opportunity every day to do that and to make decisions that will keep America safe.
Did you know about the judge's order when you issued your order for the planes to
Yeah, this is an activist judge, and I understand, we're still in litigation with this against this activist judge who's continuously tried to stop us from protecting the American people. We continue to win. His ridiculous claims are not in good standing with the law or the Constitution. We'll win this one as well, and we comply with all federal orders that are lawful and binding, and we will continue to do that. But I'm proud of the decisions that I've made, proud to work for this president each and every day to keep America safe.
All right.
Yes, I defied that court order and I can do that. Back to the activist judges, though. She keeps pushing the activist judges line as if that's, again, an excuse for it. I can do whatever the hell I want. I can violate the Constitution. I can defy lawful orders from a judge. I can do all that stuff because I'm Kristi Noem and this guy is an activist judge. It doesn't even matter if this guy falls in the line of what they claim to be an activist judge. It actually doesn't matter. But what's even worse is that he doesn't even fall in the line of what they consider an activist judge. Here, we'll let this conservative tell everyone where this judge actually lands.
They're dealing with a judge, Judge Boasberg, who's not some like 1960s Ninth Circuit hippie. He is one of the most respected conservative jurists in Washington, D.C. There are people on the Supreme Court who know him extraordinarily well. Long before Donald Trump ever thought about running for the Republican nomination in 2015, this judge that you're looking at right here was a rock solid member of the jurist community in Washington, D.C. and beloved and respected by real conservatives. So to try to paint him as some left-wing radical certainly is not going to work in Washington among conservatives, and it's not going to work on the Supreme Court. They know who Judge Boasberg is. They knew him well before they ever dealt with Donald Trump for the first time in 2017, either directly or indirectly. And so when you read news stories that Todd Blanche and Emerald Bovee both, according to news reports, told Kristi Noem to ignore a judge's orders, and Emerald Bovee actually saying to tell the court to F off. The consequences for these two men in the long run just aren't good.
I want to say again, like we did earlier, we knew this was happening when it was happening. We knew they were violating judges' orders when it was happening. We knew that they were deporting people with zero due process and sending them off to a torture concentration camp in El Salvador. We knew all this stuff, and people that were saying it were just blown off and pushed to the side as if they have some kind of issue with the president. And by the way, we do. He's a fascist, and he sends people off to random countries just for the specific purpose of torturing them. We know this about them because there's number one goal that all these folks have. It's under Donald Trump. It's under Stephen Miller. This is their plan, and this is also their revealing of their white nationalist roots. The Department of Homeland Security, under Kristi Noem, posted the stakes have never been higher, and the goal has never been more clear. Space. Next paragraph, remigration now. Remigration now, excuse me. Remigration now? That's weird. It's almost like it's exactly what it is that we said these guys are. White nationalists who think they need to cleanse the country of anyone that's too brown for them, or any of the brown folks who don't drop a knee and kiss their asses and go ahead and go to their inferior roles of being subhumans, sub-Americans who do all their work to prop up the rich white nationalists like Kristi Noem and Donald Trump. So they posted that. No one hacked the account. No one made up some new term. But Kristi Noem did have to answer one more time. And it's just as bad as the rest of her answers.
President Trump wrote on Thursday, quote, only reverse migration can fully cure this situation. On Friday, DHS posted, quote, remigration now. As you probably know, this term has been used in different situations, but including by the far right in Europe to call for the mass deportation of non-white immigrants. How specifically does the Trump administration define remigration?
Well, President Trump has been working towards cleaning up the mess that Joe Biden left us ever since he came into the White House.
But how do you define that
As you
word,
know,
Secretary
President
Noem? How do you
Biden
define
let
that word?
15. Well, first of all, we have criminal illegal aliens we've been targeting since day one. We have removed millions of people from this country already just in the few short months that President Trump has been president by making sure we're going after criminal illegal aliens that are murderers, rapists, and criminals and getting them out of our country, bringing them to justice, and then encouraging people to go home. If you're here illegally and breaking our laws, you can leave now and you may get the opportunity to come back someday. But if you wait until we detain you, and we will deport you and you'll never get the chance to come back to America and visit us or become a citizen. We're going to continue to do that, go after those criminals, go after those individuals that came in under programs that were broken on the Biden administration and people who were in place and leadership in that crazy 4 worlds we lived through, 4 years we lived through before President Trump came in. Thank God we have a president now that recognizes that letting all of these people into our country that we don't know who they are is dangerous, that we let in terrorists, we let in criminals, we let in mentally unstable people. They shouldn't be here. They're going to leave, and President Trump is going to ensure that Americans become first and the priority and that they're going to be safe on their streets again.
Secretary Noem,
Kristen Walker moved on. She didn't answer the question. What's the connection with this remigration post? Why are you guys white nationalists? Why do you keep denying that you're Nazis? It's pretty obvious that's what your goal is. We're not getting off this point until you answer the question, or we can end this interview. It's time to go ahead and call them out for covering up and not answering the questions they went on to be so proud of. Are you proud of being a white nationalist? Are you going to throw out the Heil Hitler salute? At what point are you going to finally take the full mask off? Because it is right there. Did someone hack your account, Christy? Or are you a white nationalist that we already know? Are the white nationalists that are above you telling you what to do because you're just the puppet person who's supposed to dress up and act like you have some kind of control over your department while you go and push white nationalist rhetoric? She didn't ask her those questions. Okay. I got more questions to answer. Maybe we'll talk about this a little bit more coming up on the damage report. I got to bail. I got to jump out here. John's probably in the comments right now talking shit. Well, I tell you what, bro, I'll be there in a second. Thank you guys for showing up here on the stream today on a Monday. It continues, at least for me, into this next hour and a half with John over on the damage report. We'll see you guys in a couple seconds there to a flustered and frazzled John Iderola. Appreciate you guys being here. Don't forget to go ahead, share this. Check out the videos that come up later on the page as well. Hope you guys have a great Monday. We'll see you guys tomorrow, but if you're hanging around, we'll see you guys in a second over here on the damage report. See you later.